Okay, so welcome to the deep dive. Our mission here is, well, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, we basically take a stack of source material articles, research, maybe our own notes sometimes.
And we just plunge right in. We pull out the most compelling bits, the surprising stuff, the absolutely essential insights just for you.
Think of us as your navigators for the information landscape. We dive into the really dense stuff.
So you don't have to.
Exactly. So you get the distilled knowledge, those aha moments, and hopefully a clearer picture of what's actually being presented without having to wade through it all yourself.
Precisely. And today, wow, we are embarking on a deep dive into some truly unique and, well, let's just say, intensely debated source material. We're exploring excerpts from Volume 2 of Message from the Pleiades,
Yeah.
the contact notes of Edward Billy Meier.
Right. And this source, just so everyone's clear, it consists of the claimed notes from contacts between Edward Billy Meier and beings described as extraterrestrials.
Primarily one named Semjase, presented as being from the Pleiades star cluster.
Yeah. And the text itself contains Meier's accounts and what are presented as like verbatim transcripts of these conversations and his experiences.
And the stuff you find in these notes, I mean, it covers such a staggering range.
It really does.
You've got claims about predictions that supposedly came true, technology that sounds like pure science fiction, really sharp critiques of Earth society and its leaders.
And even these detailed concepts about the nature of reality, consciousness itself, it's a whole worldview, but presented entirely through the lens of this specific source material.
Absolutely.
So maybe let's unpack this by starting with how these notes were, well, supposedly created.
Good idea. According to the text, Meier produced them through a process that's described as mechano-telepathic control.
Right, originating allegedly from the ship he was visiting.
Yeah, the claim is he was typing automatically with just one finger.
Which is wild in itself.
Right. First on a manual typewriter, then an electric one, apparently hitting speeds near 60 words per minute.
The idea being that the transmission was coming sort of directly from the ship's computer, guiding his finger. They even state recordings exist of this automatic typing happening. And within the framework of these notes, Meier's role is very specific. He sees himself, and Semjase presents him as a kind of new prophet.
Intended to be a mediator and transmitter.
Exactly. His purpose is framed as delivering what the notes call the adduced truth, basically. The truth as concluded and presented by these beings.
Along with, universal love, knowledge, wisdom, spiritual lessons, that kind of thing.
And the notes really emphasize that this task is incredibly difficult for him, marked by, what was the phrase, little reward and much grief.
Yeah, and that he was supposedly prepared for this exact role over a really long period, like nearly 40 years, according to the text.
Paints a picture of a very challenging, almost predestined mission.
Definitely. Okay, so shifting gears slightly, let's look at the beings themselves as they're described in this source.
Right. Semjase is the main voice we hear in these particular excerpts we looked at.
But she's not the only one mentioned, right?
No, not at all. Her father, Ptaah, comes up. He apparently also has a ship.
Okay.
There's Quetzal, who's described as being involved in analysis. Semjase even seems to turn to him sometimes for explanations on complex topics.
And the notes suggest he gets quite detailed, doesn't he? Elaborating with rather an effective result, I think it says.
Yeah, exactly. Then Asket and Nera are referenced sort of in passing, and Semjase mentions someone named Sisfoth in the context of earlier communications.
And the general vibe, the description in the text.
Well, it paints these beings as peaceful, humanoid, incredibly intelligent, and technologically just, vastly superior to Earth humans.
Okay, let's get into some of those claims about their capabilities and technology, because some of this stuff just leaps right out from the text.
For sure. First, the travel. They describe using beam ships and smaller scout ships.
And the shapes. They're described as round, flat round, or sphere-like. Pretty classic saucer shapes in some descriptions.
But their propulsion systems. That's where things get really intriguing, as presented.
Yeah.
The notes mention anti-gravitation drives for planetary flight. So essentially hovering or moving within an atmosphere without, traditional engines.
Okay, anti-grav.
Then there are supposedly Ptaah drives for travel in empty space, which implies speeds potentially exceeding light, though the notes don't really detail the physics beyond just using the name Ptaah.
Right.
And for cosmic distances, the big ones, they claim antimatter drives.
Antimatter drives.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And the ship material itself, that wasn't just standard metal either, was it?
No, not according to the text. It details this pretty complex 7-step process to create a special alloy.
Starting with lead.
Yeah, apparently absorbing lead from the atmosphere, removing radiation, using heat converters that somehow don't need external power, and then polarizing it. The notes state this creates an alloy far stronger than steel, though the precise final characteristics aren't fully spelled out. It's this interesting mix of, like, specific sounding details and then purposeful vagueness.
Yeah, leaves you wondering, what about their analytical tools? That sounded pretty advanced, too.
Oh, definitely. Semjase reportedly uses something called an area analyzer. There's this one instance where she focuses it on a man named Hans Jacob.
Right, and Meier sees a representation of him on a screen.
Exactly. But the analyzer doesn't just show a picture. It supposedly indicates he is very labored.
And more than that, right? It supposedly shows thought oscillations.
Yeah, from which Semjase claims they can realize all values, including apparently future events like, well, like the date of death.
Whoa.
Yes, in that Jacob case, the analyzer allegedly shows his death date. But here's a really crucial detail from the notes themselves. Semjase strictly forbids Meier from saying the date out loud.
Why? Is a reason given?
The explanation given is that it's a measure to avoid interfering with certain events or causing powerful changes just by revealing outcomes too early. It suggests this whole complex set of rules governing their interactions.
Fascinating. Okay, what other capabilities are mentioned?
Well, there's the mechano-telepathic control used for the typing we talked about earlier,
Right.
and the ability to induce a natural deep sleep. Apparently, Semjase used this on Meier's wife so he could leave for a contact without her knowing.
Convenient.
Oh. There are also claims they possess radiation weapons, described as capable of paralyzing humans who get too close to their alleged subterranean dwelling.
We'll probably touch on that dwelling later.
Yeah. And the ability to direct highly concentrated light bundles, sort of like focused beams.
And their photo analysis, that sounded almost like something out of a spy movie.
It does. The notes describe using computer analysis to check sharpness, light scatter, blur, gray factors in photos.
Comparing them against known objects in the image, like a tripod or a moped or even barbed wire.
Exactly, to verify scale and, presumably the authenticity of objects like the alleged ships in the photos.
And they could mess with electronics, too.
That's the claim. The notes recount Semjase disabling a pursuing car's motor using a magnetic beam near a forest edge.
And the jet fighter incident.
Ah, yes, the more dramatic one, causing a jet fighter's fire control panel to apparently melt down internally.
Okay, let's dive into some of those specific incidents and claims from the notes that often get brought up when people talk about the Meier case. Starting with that Hans Jacob prediction story, because it's peculiar.
It really is. So, like you said, Semjase uses the area analyzer, sees Jacob is very labored, predicts his imminent death, shows Meier the date.
And they decide to try and create proof, right? With a letter.
Yeah, the idea was to write a letter detailing the prediction and mail it to Jacob before the predicted date, hoping the postmark would establish some kind of pre-event evidence.
So the letter gets written and signed on October 28th, 1975. But it's not actually mailed until November 5th.
Right. And this is where the narrative, as presented in the source, gets really interesting. The letter, mailed from Arosa in Switzerland, apparently gets lost in the mail.
Lost.
Yep. It doesn't arrive in Hans Jacob's mailbox until the morning after the death of General Franco in Spain.
Okay, wait. How does Franco fit into this?
Well, the news reports of Franco's death, which had happened the day before Jacob got the letter, effectively provided, within the narrative of these notes, a kind of post-event confirmation. The external news confirmed Franco's death date.
Which happened just before Jacob got this letter predicting his own death.
Exactly. It creates this convoluted chain where external news validates the timing, and the delayed letter, if it hadn't been lost, would have supposedly provided the pre-event proof for Jacob's death.
Wow. That's intricate.
And the notes even include this incredibly specific detail about Franco having received 55 liters of blood during his treatment. It adds this bizarre, almost verifiable sounding, but ultimately just strange detail to the story.
It's a really fascinating example of how the proof seems to be constructed within the text itself, relying on things like a postal mishap and external news events aligning just so.
Definitely. Another dramatic incident described involves Earth military. Meier is supposedly photographing Semjase's ship and 2 scout ships.
And a jet fighter shows up.
Yeah, makes pass after pass, apparently 21 of them, near the spacecraft.
Okay, that's persistent.
On the 22nd pass, the pilot reportedly arms his fire control panel. According to the notes, Semjase detects this as a threat
And takes action.
and neutralizes the danger. which allegedly results in the pilot's fire control panel melting down internally. The text even claims a mechanic at the base later confirmed this specific type of meltdown occurred.
Then there's that car pursuit incident you mentioned earlier.
Right. Meier and some friends are being followed. Semjase tells them to wait.
And as a pursuing car gets near the edge of a forest,
She allegedly directs a magnetic beam to its motor, disables it completely. End of pursuit.
the claims go beyond just these kinds of encounters, though, don't they? Into viewing time or dimensions.
They do. The notes describe the ability to view Earth at different points in its history, or maybe different dimensions. Meier is reportedly shown visions of Earth back when dinosaurs were around.
And even earlier.
Yeah, at a time when the planet was apparently still shrouded in this dense, white, vaporous envelope.
But there's that concept that's really particularly mind-bending as it's presented, the shifting of time.
Oh, yeah, that one's tricky. Semjase supposedly speaks of a shifting of time, where Meier's told he is living twice simultaneously, present in the ship with her, but also still down on Earth, specifically described as being 2 days in the past, while his consciousness is currently in the present within the ship.
That hurts my head a little.
Right. And what's remarkable is Semjase's purported admission that even our best scientists knew little about these concerns. It's just this is mysterious even to them within their own narrative.
Okay. The notes also mention other ET visitors, right? Not just the Pleiadians.
Correct. Specifically, they describe beings supposedly from Zeta Reticuli.
And what were they doing?
Allegedly, they took various biological samples, blood, sperm, hair, saliva, fingernails, skin, even bits of clothing from 2 Earth humans.
Why?
The explanation given is for data gathering and analysis related to Earth-human biology. This interaction supposedly lasted 127 minutes.
And finally, in this section of claims, the subterranean dwelling.
Yes, Mount Shasta. The news describe a town populated by descendants of extraterrestrials living peacefully but very cautiously beneath Mount Shasta in California.
With similar spots in the Aleutians and Alaska.
Apparently so. They claim a hidden entrance exists below the eastern summit of Shasta, impossible for Earth humans to find.
And how do they stay hidden? You mentioned weapons earlier.
Yes, the text states these inhabitants use those radiation weapons, the paralyzing ones, to ensure any Earth humans who stumble too close are incapacitated and can't discover their location.
Okay. Moving on from specific incidents and tech, the notes contain some incredibly strong, sometimes pretty harsh, viewpoints on Earth and humanity. This feels like a really significant part of the text's message as it's presented.
Oh, absolutely. The critiques, especially regarding religion, are very blunt within this source.
Like what?
Well, the biblical Jehovah is described pretty negatively, wicked and unjust, I think it says.
Wow.
And held responsible for the madness of his cultic religion, and literally billions of Earth human beings innocently slaughtered in his debt.
That's quite a statement.
It is. The notes also touch on other historical religious figures. There's a claim about Huitzilopochtli expelling Quetzalcoatl through wicked deceit and deceptive machinations.
Again, it's just so important to stress, we're presenting these viewpoints as they appear in this specific source material. We're not endorsing them.
Exactly. Impartial reporting is key here. And it's not just religion. Science on Earth is also a target for criticism in these notes.
How so?
The notes claim Earth scientists are fundamentally wrong about the planet's age. They state it's 46 million years as a solid body.
Which is 46 billion in common English usage.
Right. And 646 million or billion years for its entire development, which are, vastly different numbers than mainstream science uses.
And the text portrays Earth scientists as
unwilling to learn or be advised, stuck in what it calls very faulty reckonings.
Is there an example?
Yeah, there's one given about an astronomer who apparently dismissed a written mistake about numbers in Meier's notes, like a typo, as a scientific error. Semjase reportedly calls this a sign the astronomer's understanding is rather amiss if he can't distinguish a simple writing error from a scientific one.
Ouch. Earth leaders don't fare much better, do they?
No, they're described in pretty unflattering terms, referred to as dunces who care a dirt for warnings and are impervious to concerns about the planet's well-being.
And global organizations.
Organizations like NATO and the UN are seen as too weak to be decisive when needed, unable to prevent dangerous prophecies from occurring, according to this text.
Okay, what about human origins from this perspective?
The notes claim that Earth humans are descended from an extremely highly developed human form from the depths of the universe.
And the view on procreation.
It's presented as a normal, highly valuable act, contrasting sharply with what the notes describe as untrue and frankly stupid religious interpretations. They state there's no other form of procreation, really, aside from some rare instances of mental procreation or artificial methods used for, like, species upgrading.
The notes also talk about the Earth itself having cycles.
Yeah, presented as a living entity with a slumber cycle lasting around 700,000 years.
Initiated and ended primarily by glacial periods.
That's the claim. And these cycles allegedly cause regional temperature and climate shifts, compelling species adaptation, which is then directly linked to evolution in the notes.
How does that link work? Is there an example?
Yes, the text claims, for instance, that the mammoth changed into the elephant through Earth's evolution during a glacial epoch. It supposedly migrated to warmer regions to continue its evolution.
How would biologists react to that idea?
Well, the notes themselves muse about how Earth biologists and zoologists would likely react negatively to this specific idea.
Interesting. Finally, within this section on views, there's a bit about Meier's personal struggle with materialism.
Right. He describes realizing he must be free from even the smallest jot of materialism in thoughts, words, everything, to transmit the information accurately and fulfill his mission.
But Semjase offers a counterpoint.
Yeah, she reportedly comments that he has become too anti-materialistic, almost to the point of not seeing that he and his family actually require material support just to live in the earthly world.
An interesting moment of claimed personal reflection within the text.
Okay, so let's look at some details about the claimed Pleiadian life and society. Again, just as described in these notes.
Physically, what are they like?
Described as humanoid, but apparently varying significantly in size from 40 centimeters, which is tiny, up to 4.5 meters.
Wow, that's a huge range.
It is. Most are called real human forms, but others are mentioned that look different, like Yetis, others like Cyclops, small Goliaths, etc.
And their lifespan and development.
They are said to be capable of procreation relatively early, starting at age 12 in Earth years, and their claimed lifespan is quite long, typically 1,000 to 1,200 Earth years.
1,000 years. And their homes.
Described as unlike Earth houses, all round, a flat round form with outbuildings, or sphere-like, apparently no mass-dwelling objects like our apartment buildings.
What about customs, like burial?
Burial is mentioned as the norm. Cremation is seen less favorably as involving destroyable forces. The belief presented here is that each form of life should decide its own burial method.
And feelings. How do they handle emotions?
The notes emphasize that among their race, love between men and women is open and sincere. It's only limited or controlled in specific cases, like during judgments.
But other feelings?
Other feelings are mentioned as needing strict control, but the text makes a point to distinguish these from the open expression of love between men and women.
Okay. Now, let's turn to maybe the most widely known aspects of the Meier material, the claimed predictions and warnings.
Right, and again, we're presenting these impartially as they appear in the notes. The claim is that several specific past events were foretold by Semjase using their alleged devices, and they reportedly came true as predicted.
Such as?
Well, the overthrow and expulsion of the Shah of Iran after the New Year in 1979, the success of the Voyager probe at Jupiter.
I remember that one being mentioned a lot.
Yeah. Also, the discovery of Jupiter's ring and the true nature of the Great Red Spot being a self-rotating, funnel-shaped hole or storm.
And wasn't there something about China and Vietnam?
Yes. The prediction that China would attack Vietnam described as a pro forma attack, which would serve as the absolute first predecessor to World War III.
Which the notes claim will be started by China.
That's the claim. And the text explicitly states that all of these listed events occurred as supposedly predicted by Semjase.
Okay. Beyond past predictions, there are urgent warnings too, right?
Sure.
Demands directed at Earth.
Very urgent ones. They include the immediate cessation of every exploitation of the Earth, stopping all atomic tests, and what they call the chain reaction bomb delusion.
And destroying dams and nuclear power stations.
Yes, destroying all constructed ones and explicitly stating no new ones should be built.
What are the claimed consequences if these warnings are ignored?
Presented as severe, great cosmic consequences that could affect other star systems, Earth, potentially destroyed by a firestorm,
Yikes.
and unavoidable suffering because, according to the notes, Earth is already significantly harmed.
There were also prophecies about global politics, weren't there?
A couple mentioned in these excerpts. The possibility of Russia breaking out towards the Indian Ocean from Afghanistan, metaphorically called the wolf, breaks out.
And Indira Gandhi.
Mentioned as the scorpion in the text,
Yeah.
supposedly making a sudden, catastrophic political step forward.
And finally, there was a prophecy specifically about Meier's mission itself.
Yes, stating that starting in 1980, there would be a time of increasing attacks, filled with lies and deception against him and his work.
Coming from?
Claimed to come from many people well known to Meier, specifically former group members, who would publicly spread falsehoods to distract from his work.
Okay, moving into more abstract territory now.
Yeah.
The notes present a very specific system regarding consciousness and spirituality.
Yeah, it's quite detailed. They describe a spiral form grade valuation used to quantify the level of consciousness.
How does that work?
It supposedly has a total gradation of 700 separate values, which are divided into 7 periods, each containing 100 values.
Okay, 7 periods of 100. And the calculation?
The calculation for determining a precise consciousness level within this system is described as taking the 100 nominal values in a period and dividing them by 7 times 7, so 49.
49. What about the rest?
The remaining 51 values in that 100 value period allegedly represent spiritual power. It's a very specific, almost mathematical approach to something we usually think of as qualitative.
And where do Earth humans fit into this system, according to the notes?
We are apparently arranged in a still low position, specifically the 6th position of the 2nd sphere of development. Semjase reportedly even states she could see your consciousness value the listeners if she were permitted.
Really?
Yeah. And the notes also claim that no one within Meier's group, based on their calculations, is below a value of 188 in this system.
One area where these notes are really assertive, maybe even dismissive, is regarding other claimed contactees.
Oh, absolutely. They're very clear on this within the source. They state that only a few hundred Earth humans have actually had contact, and very few of those are widely known publicly.
And out of those few hundred?
They claim only 16 worldwide are in contact with what they term very high spiritual forms.
And all the other millions of claimed connections?
Explicitly deemed worthless and without much meaning within this source material.
Are specific names mentioned?
Yes. Several individuals and claims are called out by name as deceptions in the notes. This includes Ashtar Shirin channeling.
A common name in UFO circles.
Indeed. Also, photos by M. Antonio Giannuzzi, whom they call a known jester, and Eugenio Siragusa's claimed contacts.
What about Dick Miller?
Interestingly, the notes state that the extraterrestrial messenger channeled by Dick Miller was also a deception, even while acknowledging Miller's own belief and experiences might have been genuine to him.
So they're saying he was sincerely deceived.
That seems to be the implication in the text. The source even notes that other deceivers used the beloved ploy of claiming they're going to leave Earth with extraterrestrials as a way to escape responsibility, citing a person named Munger as an example.
It definitely offers a very specific, very exclusive view of who constitutes legitimate contact.
Extremely exclusive.
So, looking at all this information, this vast range of claims, what is the claimed value of this information from the perspective presented within these notes?
Well, the notes reiterate again and again that this information constitutes the adduced truth, the necessary insights for Earth humanity's survival and progress.
And they criticize Earth scientists and the public for not accepting it.
Yes, attributing it to ignorance, arrogance, or just an unwillingness to learn and abandon what they call faulty reckonings.
Is there a stated purpose beyond just delivering truth?
They claim the information is intended to prepare Earth humans, especially scientists, for future events and recognitions.
How? Just by reading it?
Not just through direct information, apparently, but also through influencing artistic impulses. They suggest this inspires authors and similar persons to describe future possibilities or produce paintings or models.
Like the image Meier reportedly saw in front of the beam shed.
Exactly. Thereby sort of slowly preparing humanity for these concepts.
Wow. This deep dive, just covering excerpts from one volume, it really shows the sheer scope and the level of specific detail and the claims presented in these Edward Billy Meier contact notes.
It really does. From incredibly technical descriptions of propulsion and analysis tools to these highly specific, sometimes really bizarre, claimed incidents.
To the broad critiques of human society, detailed models of consciousness, it's all in there, presented as factual accounts within this text.
And we really have just scratched the surface of the information and claims even within these excerpts, let alone the full volume or the entire reported body of contact notes over the years.
Yeah. Encountering information like this, I mean, with such sweeping fundamental claims about history, reality, humanity's place,
Yeah.
it's inherently challenging, isn't it?
Absolutely. It forces a kind of reflection on your own established understanding and perspective, really, regardless of whether you find the specific claims credible or not.
Yeah. So here's maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to consider. It builds on that idea that knowledge is most valuable when it's understood and applied.
Mm-hmm.
What responsibility do you have when you encounter information that so radically challenges established views, especially if you're just the recipient, just hearing about it?
Yeah, what does it truly mean to understand something that potentially lies so far outside your current framework of knowledge or belief?
It's a question that definitely goes beyond just these specific notes, doesn't it?
It really does. Something to think about.